Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Nats Chat is brought to you by Walters. Make Walters your spot before and after this Sunday's DC Defenders game, which is this Sunday at noon at Audi Field.
Register online for your first beer on us. Go to waltersdc.com and click on events.
Here's Alex Call. He ropes one to left center field. That's a base hit. Headed home to score is Thomas. Abrams right behind him. He will score. And Alex Call, the former Guardian, has a 2-run single. And the Nationals a 3-0 lead here in the fourth inning. The 1-0. Swinging a blast to right center field for Bell. He gets into this one. It is going, and gone. Over the big wall in right center field. Josh Bell's first home run as a Guardian comes at the expense of his former teammates, the Nationals. It's now the Nationals 3 and the Guardians 2.
And Edwards delivers. Check swing roller up the third base line. Runner breaking for the plate. Abrams will have to throw to first. It's in time for the out, but a run scores, and the Guardians take the lead.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Saturday, April 15th, 2023. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark Zuckerman is off for this installment of the pod, and so I am joined by the man who runs the pod, the boss, Tim Shovers. He is with us. It's good to have him with us. It's good to have you with us. We are coming to you here off yet another one-run Nationals loss. Boy, we're getting used to these things. A 4-3 loss to the Cleveland Guardians at Nationals Park on Friday night in Game 1 of a 3-game series. The Nats now are 4-10. Each of their last 5 losses has been by 2 runs or less, with 4 of those 5 losses being 1-run losses. Tim, the Nats are in these games. I mean, the Nats are not getting, smashed. The Nats are not getting routed. The Nats are not getting embarrassed, but the Nats do continue to lose these games. 3 consecutive losses now and 10 losses in 14 games in this regular season.
Yeah, Al, I know that the win-loss record is obviously very poor, 4-10. And last year, for instance, believe it or not, they had a better start. They were 6-7 before they went on a long losing streak. However, anecdotally speaking, it just feels like these games are much, much more competitive. I know that's loser talk, but we are talking about a team that's had a rough 8+ months of baseball. So tonight, this game was a really disappointing one, I would say, and we'll get into it. You know, having that 3-0 lead and then seeing it disappear and just the bats doing absolutely nothing in the back half of the game. But overall, Al, I look at the road trip they just came off of. They were within an eyelash of having a winning road trip. They play a 1-run game tonight. I do feel like things are just a bit better than they were on tax day of 2022, for instance.
You are getting a more professional output from the team this season. Now, we are only 14 games into the 162, but yeah, I mean, it does look better. Certainly the recent scores have been better. And, the more we get away from those back-to-back series to begin things for the Nats in the regular season, the 3 games against Atlanta, the 3 games against Tampa Bay, it more and more feels like, hey, you faced 2 really good teams to begin the season. Some of those scores were not close. But since then, the Nats have been, a respectable team. And, a lot of this is framed by your expectations coming into the season. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. And how about this regarding the Nats and the Rays? So the Rays are unbeaten no more, 13-1 to begin their regular season. But prior to the Rays' loss, it was the Nationals who had come the closest to beating the Rays this season. The Nats, as you may recall, April 4th led going into the 9th inning. So, not that one game really dictates anything or represents anything, but that was kind of a quirky, fun thing that prior to the Rays' first loss, it was the Nationals who had come the closest to beating the mighty Rays.
Yes, indeed. But that loss gets to along the lines of some of the recent losses, which is where the bullpen hasn't hung on. And so now you look at really a week plus, and that's 3 games when you look at the Kyle Finnegan implosion, the one where they didn't get it done on the road trip, and then Friday evening against Cleveland.
Yeah, the bullpen, had a really good series against the Angels, as we discussed on the podcast. Friday night was not a particularly good night for the pen. And, we can get right to it here. So the Nationals on Friday night got a good outing from starting pitcher Trevor Williams. I want to get to that because he's been good for the Nats so far. But yet 3 relievers for the Nats on Friday night, combining to allow 3 runs, 2 earned in 4 innings. Hunter Harvey, 2 runs, 1 2/3 innings with 3 strikeouts. He, at times in his appearance, looked terrific, but he also had some problems. He came into the game top of the 6th, runners on first and third, no outs. Nats up 3-0. He promptly induced a 6-3 double play on which a run did score, but Harvey then struck out the Guardians' number 5 batter, Andres Jimenez, on 3 pitches for the 3rd out. So you say, all right, all things considered, nice job by Harvey there. But then he, in the top of the 7th, gave up a leadoff homer by our old pal, the ex-Nat Josh Bell, on a bomb to center field to cut the Nats' lead to 3-2. And then Harvey gave up a single and 2 two-out walks to load the bases. Carl Edwards Jr. then came into the game. He officially ended up allowing 1 run unearned in 1 1/3 innings. He came into the game, though, top of the 7th, bases loaded, 2 outs, Nats up 3-2, and he issued a 5-pitch bases loaded walk of Jose Ramirez to tie the game at 3. And then Edwards in the top of the 8th gave up that unearned run. He began the inning by committing a fielding error. He botched the fielding of a leadoff tapper by Andres Jimenez. Edwards then gave up a first pitch double by, yes, Josh Bell to deep right center field. And then Edwards induced a first pitch run-scoring ground out off the bat of Will Brennan. And that's how the Guardians went up 4-3, and the Guardians ended up winning the game 4-3. Hobie Harris did toss a perfect top of the 9th. So, you had interspersed in there some good stuff from Nats relievers, but you also had way too many walks. You had the giving up of the home run by Josh Bell, Hunter Harvey giving that up. And you just had, in a game in which the Nats once again didn't score many runs, you needed better from the bullpen, and the Nats, unfortunately, did not get better on Friday night.
And Josh Bell has been really struggling so far this season in his new tenure with Cleveland, and the 2 best hits he's had all year came against the bullpen late in the game, including the home run. So just a bad night. I will say, though, the positive, Al, you mentioned it, you talked about Hunter Harvey. He was throwing 100 a few times, so I do want to give him credit where credit is due, but otherwise, a disappointing end to the evening.
Yeah, so Josh Bell, we've become used to this, right? We know this well. When he's up, he's way up, and when he's down, he's way down, and he can struggle something fierce. And even with what he did on Friday night, Josh Bell for the Guardians here so far this regular season, OPS of just .507. He is not off to a good start. Remember, we saw this a couple of years ago in his first season with the Nats, but man, he did look comfortable on Friday night, and those were like vintage Josh Bell hits. He's a big dude. We know that. He's got a lot of strength. And he clobbered those 2 baseballs on those hits, hit him deep, hit him hard. And he, if you didn't know better, you'd think that Josh Bell was at his peak form of say, the second half of 2021 or last season, as opposed to having struggled so far this year. He looked just fine, at least in game 1 of this series.
I think he's one of the streakiest hitters I've ever watched on a day in and day out basis. It's really incredible how he goes from his valleys and peaks that go back and forth. And Friday night, as you said, another great example.
Yeah, he really is like that. That's true. And, I guess with him, it's like you can't get sucked into the moment. You really have to look at the bigger picture with him and see, okay, at the end of the year, where are we? Because he'll drive you nuts if you just take like a 2-week cut of his season and you say, okay, how's he doing? Because he may be doing nothing for those 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, he might catch fire. But he was productive for the Guardians on Friday night. So I mentioned Trevor Williams. Trevor Williams has done a nice job so far as the Nationals. Well, I guess in theory, what is he? Is he their number 3 starter? I guess you would say that, right? In terms of like expectations for the year. What do you put Corbin? You'd put Corbin number 4, number 5, Chad Kuhl number 4, number 5. So Williams at best is your number 3. But I tell you what, if you're going off what everyone did last season, Trevor Williams would be your number 1 just because he's the guy with the best season last season. When you compare his 2022 to Corbin's and Kuhl's and Josiah Gray's and, Mackenzie Gore, obviously not a big body of work. But Trevor Williams is doing a nice job. And I thought on Friday night, he was good for a 3rd time in 3 outings here. He allowed 1 run in 5 innings. He gave up 4 hits, 2 doubles, and 2 singles. He did issue 2 walks and a hit by pitch. Like we said, walks were an issue for Nats pitching in this game. He recorded only 2 strikeouts, and he, over his 5 innings, did throw a lot of pitches, 95 pitches. It's funny. Normally, when a starter has a high pitch count like that, it's at least in small part due to the pitcher having recorded a lot of strikeouts and or having issued a lot of walks. He only had 2 strikeouts and 2 walks in this game from Williams, but he just had some plate appearances in which guys just drove up the pitch count. And so he threw 95 pitches over 5 innings. But the only run that was charged to Williams came on a double play with him out of the game. And, I mentioned him giving up 2 doubles. One of the doubles was not a true double.
3-2 pitch. Swinging a fly ball to deep center field. Robles spins all the way around and then leaps and missed the ball. It lands on the warning track and bounces over the fence. Boy, Robles got all turned around with that line drive right at him. Did the full pirouette and didn't get a lot on his jump as a result. He wasn't in great position to jump.
Leadoff full count ground rule double by Ahmed Rosario to conclude a 10-pitch plate appearance. So there's part of why Trevor Williams' pitch count got up so high. But that leadoff ground rule double by Rosario that happened in that 1-run Guardian 6th, it came on a ball that was misjudged by Victor Robles in center field, and the ball then bounced over the wall. I mean, the play should have resulted in an out. Wasn't necessarily the easiest fly ball in the history of fly balls to catch, but that was a very playable fly ball. And Robles just misjudged it. I mean, we haven't seen many Roblesian plays so far this season. We unfortunately saw one right there, and it proved to be costly.
I've been a big defender and a big forgiver of Robles over the years, and I'm still one of those guys that wants to give it one more shot. And I've been really excited by the start so far offensively in early April. But, man, you used Roblesian right there, Al, and that's the proper way to say it. It's just, why do these plays happen? We haven't had one of them on the bases yet, right? Am I right? We haven't had one of them. Those are the true ones. But, yeah, it's just not only was that a poor play, but it just came at such a crucial time. As you said, Nats are winning. We're in the later stage of the game. And then this play happens and you knew, because Trevor Williams had one more inning in him max. And so the second that happened, it's like, okay, the pen's probably going to have to come in the 6th. Now we're looking at 10 to 12 outs from the bullpen. And the whole game really changed after that one play.
Yeah, that was tough. And Robles last season did get back to being very good defensively. And so I don't want to hammer him for this because, it seemed like sort of an honest mistake that, outfielders will make over the course of a season. But that was tough to watch. And he did kind of look a bit too casual on that play. But, I don't know if it just looked that way. I mean, like I said, it wasn't the easiest fly ball to catch. But with his speed, he got back in plenty of time to make the catch. He just misjudged where the ball was going and ended up landing behind him. And then, like I said, bounced over the wall. So really tough break right there. But overall, I mean, Trevor Williams, look, I don't want to overstate what he's done, but just going through his 3 starts here so far in the regular season. So he, in his first start, 4 runs, 3 earned in 5 innings. So, okay, he wasn't great in that game, but, he was so-so in the game. His next outing, 2 runs in 5 1/3 innings, 4 strikeouts versus no walks. And then what we had on Friday night, 1 run in 5 innings. I mean, again, number 4 starter, number 3 starter, however you want to sort of frame him. You're not asking for, 1 run in 8 innings, start in, start out. Can you be solid? And can you be dependably solid? And I feel like he has been that so far this season.
Yeah, I really like what I've seen from him. I think he's a 5 and dive guy. Is that fair to say? And so that's going to be interesting to see if there's any games where he can tickle that 6th inning, if possible. So you probably need the 8 bullpen lined up with him fresh and ready to go on evenings where you know that you might need at least 4 innings from him. But I like what I see so far out. He's, first off, and we talked earlier about how the team's more competitive, he's a serviceable major league pitcher. A year ago at this time, this staff did not have that, did not have 5 guys like that. Yohan Adon, for instance, was in the opening day rotation. He's not Yohan Adon. He's a real major league pitcher. Considering the circumstances, I thought it was a wise signing in the offseason.
Yeah, and it's a 2-year contract, too, so they have him for next season. The phrase 5 and dive has become funny because that was like a real insult a few years ago. That's now what most starting pitchers are, 5 and dive. Honestly, if you get 5 innings out of your starting pitcher these days, it's almost considered a win. That's oh, okay, that's good. That's he pitched, he gave you a chance to win. I mean, it used to be you turned your nose at a guy who would only last for 5 innings. Now it's kind of yeah, you know what? That's not too bad. 1 run in 5 innings, 2 runs in 5 innings, that kind of a thing. There's no doubt the bar has been so lowered on starting pitching in terms of how many innings you pitch. There's no question about that, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Hey, are you a law firm partner stuck on an underperforming team while the rest of the competitors are spending big and winning big? Well, unlike Mackenzie Gore and Keibert Ruiz, you have options. You don't have to stay on your 60-win team. NatChat sponsor Mason Kalfis and his team specialize in placing partners and associates at medium-sized and large law firms in Washington, D.C. and across the country. Mason Kalfis has recruiters in 6 states and has placed lawyers in more than half of the 100 largest law firms in the United States. While you may be reading doom and gloom from the legal press, many practices are red hot: antitrust, IP litigation, white-collar litigation, finance and direct lending, and healthcare. Even in the quote-unquote slow first quarter of 2023, Mason Kalfis worked with 3 different lawyers who doubled the compensation their previous law firms were paying those lawyers. Because you are not under a CBA or team control for 6 years. In fact, staying at a firm too long is often a recipe for being underpaid. Explore your options today with Mason Kalfis. He is Scott Boras-like when it comes to law firm partner contracts, and Mason Kalfis will negotiate you a new and better contract today. Call Mason today at 202-486-3535. That number again, 202-486-3535.
Now the 1-0. Swinging a blast to left center field. This is well struck. Back on its straw to the warning track, looking up, and it's gone! 4 rows into the Brewhouse red seats, an opposite field home run for Luis Garcia, number 1 this season. And the Nationals have the game's first run. The Nationals won, the Guardians nothing.
Well, we talk about the bullpen and we talk about the Robles play in the field, but, bottom line, this was another game in which the Nats didn't do much offensively. 3 runs, 8 hits, although one of the hits was a home run. Yes, we did have a Nationals home run on Friday night, just the 6th Nationals home run over 14 games in this regular season. By the way, the Nats and the Guardians are the 2 worst teams in the majors so far in terms of hitting home runs. The Guardians have 7 home runs. The Nationals have 6 home runs. So if you're headed out to Nats Park this weekend and are looking for offensive fireworks, don't be stunned if you don't get those fireworks. But anyway, the Nats did have a homer, also had a double in this game to go with 6 singles, did work 3 walks. But Luis Garcia on Friday night, getting on base 4 times. He was the Nationals' number 5 batter. He went 2 for 2 with a solo homer, a single, and a couple of walks. Garcia in the Nats' 3-run 4th. Yes, we did have a 3-run inning for the Nats in this game. A 1-out solo homer to left center field, 400 feet per Statcast. Also for Garcia, bottom of the 2nd, a 1-out single to center field on an 0-2 pitch and a nice piece of hitting. And then the 2 walks, 2 2-out walks. Bottom of the 5th, a 2-out walk. Bottom of the 7th, a 2-out walk. So some good stuff from Luis Garcia in this game, although he did make the final out in the game. You also had a couple of hits from Lane Thomas, in addition to another outfield assist. Lane Thomas was the Nats' number 7 batter on Friday night, 2 for 4 with 2 singles, a stolen base, and that outfield assist. Outfield assist, top of the 3rd.
The 2-0. Swinging a line drive hook to right. This is trouble. It's going to be down. Thomas chases over, cuts it off. Ramirez trying for second. Thomas with a good arm. Fires on 2 hops to Abrams. The tag is in time. He's out. What a cannon shot from Lane Thomas in the right field corner. Gunning down Ramirez, trying to leg it into a double.
With Lane Thomas, center field, little tricky for him. He's not awful defensively in center, but we've seen him have some issues, especially when it comes to navigating fly balls deep in center field and have a feel for where the outfield wall is. But man, this guy is throwing out runners like crazy so far this season as the Nats' every game right fielder. And it's not even just that. He makes plays close. Even when he doesn't get the outfield assist, he makes plays close, and he absolutely gives opposing teams something to think about when it comes to trying to run on him, run on balls hit to him. His arm really is emerging as a weapon.
I really like that throw tonight. That was a great throw. Abrams made a nice tag as well. I think credit should be given there. You tell me. I know you look at the Fangraphs stuff more closely than me, but at least according to the eye test, is it fair to say that Lane Thomas has a better arm in right field than Juan Soto?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would say that. Soto's arm wasn't or isn't woeful, but Lane Thomas's arm is a real weapon. It really is kind of slapping you across the face in this early portion of the season. It feels like every game his arm does something, either an assist or, like I said, he makes a play close, or a runner doesn't try to stretch, say, a single into a double because of Lane's arm, that kind of a thing. Yeah, I mean, one of my real hopes for this Nats season is that the defense does take a big step forward. And I feel like that potential is so there. And I think, we've seen that the defense these last few weeks, I think, has been good. But, like you go around the diamond, I think you have a chance to be good defensively at every spot, or at least competent defensively at every spot. And with the outfield, I mean, especially Robles in center, Thomas in right, that's a pretty good tandem in terms of 2/3 of your outfield, to where those guys can be real positives for you. And, I think Alex Call can play a nice left field. We've seen him do some nice things at times. So, yeah, good to see that from Lane Thomas. So he had 2 hits in the game. Luis Garcia had 2 hits in the game. And Jeimer Candelario was your other national who had 2 hits in the game. He was a Nats cleanup batter, 2 for 5 with a double and a single. But, you also had some rough games here. Joey Meneses, 0 for 5 in the game. Boy, he is really off to a rough start. Remember, still without a home run in this regular season here. And, not to keep beating up on Victor Robles, but he went 0 for 5 in this game as the Nats number 9 batter, and he struck out in a big spot. Bottom of the second, he struck out on 4 pitches with the bases loaded and 2 outs. Those moments end up being magnified by times 10, because the Nats aren't very good offensively. And so when they have a spot like that, bases loaded, and they don't come through, it sticks with you, because there may not be another opportunity like that again over the course of the game.
Yeah, the real bummers on the Robles at bats early on. He had the bases loaded in the second, like you mentioned, and in the fourth. The second, he was swinging out of his shoes early on in that at bat, and you could tell exactly where this one was headed, and it resulted with him with strike 3. And then another disappointing at bat in the fourth. The bases were loaded, but he had a very weak chopper over to third, and that resulted in an easy toss for Ramirez to get the out at home on the force out. And as I said, I root for Victor Robles really, really hard. I'm giving him one more shot in 2023, but those 2 at bats in a vacuum did not do him any favors.
No, I mean, it was shades of the Robles of 2020 and 2021 and 2022. And, he has cooled off here a bit offensively. But, again, it's kind of like the Josh Bell thing. You can't get sucked into arriving at a full definitive conclusion off a few games. You really have to let the season breathe in a spot like the Nats are in, rebuild. You let the guy play and you see what happens. I mean, in most other situations, he would not be getting still an opportunity here to establish himself as the Nationals' every game center fielder, but this is kind of where they're at. So he's getting what we think is his final shot to be the Nats' number 1 center fielder, but who knows? Next season, we might be dancing this dance one more time, but not his best game on Friday night.
Hey, Nats Chat listeners, Tim Shovers here, producer of the podcast, to tell you about Game Time. Do you struggle sometimes to find tickets to your favorite events? Buying tickets to these shouldn't be stressful. That's why you should look into the Game Time app. It's even harder these days with the lack of paper tickets available on the street. If you're looking for tickets to Nats, DC United, or even the Drake concert this summer, Game Time offers the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code natschat for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account at gametime.co and redeem code natschat for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Breaking news from the NFL, the Commanders are about to have a new owner. Our Jonathan Jones reporting that current owner Daniel Snyder has reached an agreement in principle to sell the team to a group led by 76ers and New Jersey Devils owner Josh Harris for around $6 billion. That move would close the book on the Snyder era in D.C.
All right, well, the last 48, 72 hours in Washington, D.C. sports have been bonkers. There has been so much going on when you consider I mean, look, the hockey team is no more with its head coach. I mean, there was that late Friday. Peter Laviolette is out as Capitals head coach. But yeah, there also is this thing of the football team, the Washington Commanders, in the process of being sold. And we on Thursday afternoon had multiple reports of Dan Snyder having reached an agreement with Josh Harris to sell the team to Harris for $6.05 billion. Now, to tie this into the Nats. So first of all, at Nationals Park on Friday night, there was at one point an F Dan Snyder chant. There was that same chant at a DC Defenders game at Audi Field a few weeks ago. And we actually had that chant, however brief, at Nationals Park on Friday night. But you were at Nats Park for a portion of the game. I know you have some thoughts on this sale of the Commanders, which, is not final yet, and it's only in agreement, and the agreement hasn't even been signed. So it's not even definite that Harris is getting a team. But, I mean, we are nearing the end of the Dan Snyder reign of terror. But also, of course, we have the Nationals and their ownership uncertainty. And I know you had some things that you wanted to get into.
Yeah, thanks, Al. First off, everyone should go check out Al Galdi's podcast Friday morning. You had a great reaction to that, so want to give a plug there. No one knows the Commanders and their history better than Al, and you'll get his unfiltered thoughts there. So just want to give you that plug. But why I wanted to talk about this through a Nats prism, Al, is because I think that this week and Thursday in particular, when the news broke, the Sportico report that Josh Harris was buying the team, I think it was a great day for the Washington Nationals. And let me explain why I think that. I subscribe to Rising Tides Lift All Boats. The NFL is the most popular sport in this country. That's obviously beyond argument at this point. And it's been a toxic brand in town. It's not been good for local sports that the NFL team has been unpopular as it is. And so any sort of the NFL team being a little bit more popular just makes sports more popular, make local sports more popular. And the more people that follow sports in this city, to me, are more and more people that are going to watch an inning or two of a baseball game and maybe even go to a baseball game. So that's more and more groups of 15-year-olds who are meeting on the weekends to watch games together. And those people rub off, and next thing you know, they start talking about Joey Meneses and Luis Garcia. So I overall, in the big picture, think that Thursday was not just a good day, but a great day for the Washington Nationals. But I know it involves a little bit of imagination to get there.
Yeah, I don't think that's like a crazy theory that you have with that. I mean, I know for me, from a Nationals perspective, so there is this like extreme joy right now if you are a Commanders fan. I mean, there are people celebrating. There have been people crying over this, if you can believe that. I mean, the last 24 years with Dan as owner of the team have been horrendous. Way too many losses, way too much dysfunction, way too many controversies, way too many scandals, way too many investigations. I mean, on and on I can go. I think everyone listening knows the deal. But you see this joy, you perhaps experience this joy. And it does make you think of if/when the Nationals get sold. And right now, the sale of the Nats is essentially on hold. But if/when that happens, what will that be like? What will that mean? Now, the Lerners are not Dan Snyder, okay? Dan Snyder has been an atrocious pro sports owner. The Lerners have not been atrocious pro sports owners. I actually think you can make the case that the Lerners have been good owners, okay? Now, there are nits to pick, and there are definite instances in which the Lerners have done things that make you scratch your head and can annoy you as a fan. You know, the deferred money has turned people off. The Nats from 2006 through 2010 were not good, and there were a lot of things going on in terms of lack of spending on infrastructure that bothered people. I'm sure if you ever sit down and have a cocktail with Mike Rizzo, he can tell you a bunch of stuff off the record in terms of things that he's had to deal with the Lerners. But bottom line, 2012 through 2019, 8 consecutive winning seasons, a bunch of postseason appearances, and of course, a World Series championship. The Lerners every season had the Nats as a team that was in the upper half of MLB in payroll. You know, I think if you're being fair and objective, the Lerners have done a lot of good things as owners of the Nats. So when they sell the team, whenever that is, I mean, I think those things should be acknowledged, and it's not going to be, you know, like people want to throw a parade the way that they do for Dan Snyder. At the same time, this lame duck status of Nats ownership isn't good. It isn't healthy. And whenever the Nats come out of this rebuild and are good again, and that day will come, it's just a question of when, it kind of seems like you're not going to get to that point, or at least it's going to be more difficult to get to that point without new ownership that can breathe fresh air into the team, that can be a willing, maybe even aggressive spender in free agency when the Nats are ready to spend again in free agency. And when it comes to the rebuild doing well, having new ownership that's very willing and aggressive to spend on infrastructure to whatever extent the Nats need to further their spending on infrastructure, I think that matters too. And so seeing what's happening with the Commanders, and as a fan of the Commanders, experiencing what's happening with the Commanders, it just makes me think about, man, it will be awesome when the Nats get sold. The problem, of course, is we have no idea when that will be, and it may be a while, as in years. I don't know if you came across this. So Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, he had this in a piece like a week or so ago. Quote, "The Nationals almost certainly will not be sold until their dispute with the Orioles over local television rights fees is resolved. Heaven knows when that will happen. The dispute is more than a decade old and, as I've written before, is baseball's equivalent of the 100 Years' War. In the meantime, though, the Nats project to be one of the worst teams in baseball, and their entire operation is pretty much on hold." End quote. How about that last part? Their entire operation is pretty much on hold. That's not healthy. That's not good. And that needs to change. The problem, though, is we don't know when that will change.
Of course, it's a bad situation. But I'm just saying, Al, just from, I think the football team, the good news just helps this city's sports ecosystem top to bottom. And I do think that will help the Washington Nationals. I will also say, you talk about the 100 Years' War and all that stuff. You remember the Dugout that I used to co-host with Tom Lavero on Sports Talk 570 years back? The first show that he and I ever had together was November of 2013, okay? The opening topic was, when is the Masson situation going to get settled? It feels like it's been going on forever. So that gives you my thoughts on how long this situation is going to take. I hear everything you're saying, and I have no refute to any of it, but I just think overall, if you root for DC sports, even if you're not a fan of the Commanders, I think this week was a great one.
I'm with you, and I've always been a believer in, you're allowed to really like all of these teams. Like, it doesn't have to be either or. And I, at times, have sensed this almost like rivalry between, say, Commanders fans and Nationals fans. And there are Nationals fans who hate the football team, and there are football team fans who hate the baseball team. And I'm like, why? Like, can't we all just get along? Like, it's Washington, D.C. sports. And, I think a big part of that has been Dan Snyder. Dan Snyder has been so despised. And I think a lot of people are just like, well, I don't like him, and so I don't like the team. And, there's more to it than just that. Dan Snyder and the Lerners do not get along. Okay, that has been confirmed now. I was told by someone in 2019 when the Skins were having an awful season and the Nats were on their way to a World Series championship that Dan and Bruce Allen, who was the Skins team president at the time, were not happy that the Nats were doing well. Were like annoyed at the success of the Nationals. I would bet at least in part because that success made the Skins look even worse. So it's like, you've had this unhealthy relationship between the football team and the baseball team. I think it'd be great if the football team and the baseball team got along better. And we have seen some more like social media interaction between the two teams in recent years. Like the teams will tweet at each other. So that's been nice. But, I would love to see maybe like events at which we see the football team and the baseball team maybe have like their star players commingling and hanging out with fans. There are all kinds of things you can do, but it doesn't have to be either or. You don't have to pick one or the other. Like, you can love both, embrace both, and it'd be awesome if both were great. So we'll see when that happens. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on Twitter at @Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to sponsor the show. Email Tim at natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And you can always contact the show and listen to episodes of the show at our new website, natschatpodcast.com. You can also get yourself or someone who you know a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt by going to our website, natschatpodcast.com. All radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. A salute to Tim Newmark. For the Nats Chat Podcast music, visit timnewmark.com. For Tim Shovers, I'm Al Galdi. Mark will be back with me for the next installment of the podcast. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Take advantage, however, as Tanner Blankenhorn hit into a double play to end the inning. This one hit the other way, but it's going to be in the gap in left center, and it takes off and then booted by the center fielder, Cameron Eden. Into second base, Darren Baker. He was going to get a double anyway, so there won't be an error on the play.